Guys, welcome to the First Responder Playbook. I am blessed to have Pradeepa with me today. I'm going to let Pradeepa do her own introduction in just a second, because I know I will not do this justice. But she is a TEDx speaker, a three-time author, an executive coach known for mining diamonds in leaders. With a foreword by Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, her latest book, Practical Leadership: Simplifying the Complexity, equips leaders with tools, insights, and confidence to lead with purpose and effectiveness. Her mission? To change the landscape of leadership in humanity, one bold leader at a time. Pradeepa, welcome to the First Responder Playbook.
Thank you, Brent. I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And thank you so much for the avenue that you have created and be able to talk about bold leadership and topics that are not often focused for such a crucial you know part of our society, which whom are the first responders. So thank you so much for creating this avenue. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to have you.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk about one, how did you go down the path of writing books?
Mm,
But two, I think it is awesome that you've done a TEDx speech. How did you go down that path as well?
yeah. um, I'll talk about the book first and then the TEDx. For me, I grew up in India and I did my schooling and my college there in India. I didn't realize, but I realized it now through reflecting. Somewhere around like eighth grade, where I was studying, I realized I really enjoyed writing essays. And I'm not like just reading the book and reproducing what it is supposed to be. I had a flair for storytelling back then. I'm just thinking about it. And I wrote essays for my language papers and history. Most those are the two. Um, and for example, we studied Boer War for Africa, and I still remember how I talked about the war through my lens, through how I read it and how I saw it happened. And it got called out, thankfully, or my principal was my history teacher too, my school principal, and I got called out for a writing that essay, and she really appreciated how I put my visualization into that work. Back then, I never saw a movie or anything like that. It was all in my imagination. So fast forward, I there is something in me about writing and expressing myself through stories, because I feel like I am a big lover of stories. My grandma and my dad and my aunt, they're amazing storytellers. Like I even listened to them telling stories when I was an adult. So, no shame there. And to me, there is something about storytelling that connects people. So I think I followed that passion along. But after getting married, coming to the US, and I kind of forgot about that side of writing. And then suddenly in 2012, 2013, when the workplace that I was working at, they were starting their corporate blog, and they asked me to write something. And I started writing. There was a topic about servant leadership back then that was really close to my heart, and I wrote a story, because the persona that I had was a person in my team who was very much playing that role of a servant leader. So I used her as my main character and wrote the story around her. And then I sent it to one of my colleagues for just editing and proofreading, just to make sure everything looks good. But then, to my surprise and to my fear, I got the article back completely full of red lines, right? And there was so many edits in there, it didn't look like my article anymore. And there was also a banter and, like a fun comment, like light-hearted comment about the generous use of the word that I had in my article, the. And they called me the Pradeepa, right? Like they signed like the Pradeepa, dear the Pradeepa. And somehow back then I didn't know how to process that, but it really shook me, saying like, oh my God, I don't think I'm good at this. I'm not going to write anymore. And I kind of closed the chapter on writing. Of course, I published the blog with whatever comments my colleague gave me, but then that's it. Like I was really scared. And then it took a really long time, like and until like 2016, I didn't write anything at all. My LinkedIn probably would be the, like how I'm showing up on LinkedIn there probably would be the best way to assess that. But then something started changing for me. My own, journey with my infertility struggles. There are things that I really wanted to share. And speaking is an avenue that I already ventured into. And I thought, like, how about writing as well? So I slowly started expressing myself again, but there's so much of fear. Now it was not just sent to one person, who can redline it and just send it to me discreetly via an email, right? But here I have to be on a public platform where I don't know how many connections I had, like back then, 500,000. I have no idea. All these eyes can critique and comment and what kind of criticism I'm going to get. And that was quite scary for me. And I really have to get over that. And one perspective that after my continuing to grow myself, the perspective that I decided to take that really helped me with that is, I am not writing to get awarded in for language, right? Like I'm not being rewarded or awarded for my linguistic skills or my grammatical skills. I am writing for a different purpose. I am writing because I'm thinking writing is an avenue for me to express myself, express my thoughts, and in a way that I wanted to communicate to other people who might benefit from what I'm sharing. And that perspective, I kind of, really held that perspective strongly. That really helped me come out of the fear that I had since the blog, and the red lines that I got from the blog. I also remember during some of my early days, I didn't have an editor or anything like that. I just write and I publish. There were a few people who commented on the grammatical mistakes that I made. And I thanked them. And I went back and changed it. And because I really appreciate somebody's taking their time to tell me what I have to change. And I appreciated that because I saw that as a learning opportunity and a growing opportunity rather than a criticism. And that also helped me tremendously. So that was my start of like coming out of the shell. And I wrote my first book. And my first book was literally, I did a video of all the topics. I took everything that I said, converted that script into chapters, and then had a publisher work with me to edit those chapters. And then I published my first book. So, it was kind of like a speaking to a language, speaking to converting them into a text to, making it a book. That was the start of my journey. But then what I also realized, Brent, is the more that I started writing, the more I started becoming more and more comfortable. I have to write that first blog that got the red line to be able to be here and speak about my journey now 15 years later. And published my third book and got raving feedback and a beautiful foreword by Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. He just doesn't go around write forewords for books. He checks out what I'm working on and how I wrote. So to me, that was improvement in progress. I have to, there is no easy way to get over that. And I know the reason why I want to share this story, this backstory, is a lot of people hesitate. A lot of people that I work with, a lot of my clients, my students, they all hesitate to share online for various reasons. And one of the reasons is being critiqued and being judged critically by other people. And what I have come to realize is if you put anything out there, there's a percentage of people who are going to love it because they care for you and they love you and they want to support your work. There's a percentage of people who's going to hate your work no matter what you do, how beautiful, how wonderful it is. Even if you're the Picasso of the world, if you put a painting out there, they are going to critique you. And then there's the bunch of people in the middle who just don't care. And I decided I wanted to serve the people who see some value in my work. And there's all these people. I'm just going to thank them if they choose to respond. And that's pretty much it. I will be moving on. So for me to write 3 books, I have to write 1 blog. And for writing that 1 blog, I have to write the first paragraph. And for the first paragraph, I have to write the first sentence. And for that first sentence, I have to write the word the.
It's the building blocks.
Yeah.
And I love that because I actually just got my first article published in a police journal
Awesome.
last month. And it is very much for me to come out of my comfort zone. I'm actually a doctoral student too, and I wrote the article, and the gentleman said, and I love him. He was actually one of our previous guests, Dan Frazier. He said, "That's a really good academic article, but you're speaking to a group of police trainers, and it's not sticky."
Yeah.
And he's like, "It's not." He's like, and he gave me some tips to redo it.
Yeah.
To make it stick. And I'll never forget, for like a week and a half, I just had this writer's block of how do I want to approach this?
Yeah.
And I sat there one night, I was fixing to go to bed, and I was like, I know what I want to write about. And I scrapped the whole thing, and I knocked this new article out in an hour. And he read it a couple days later, and he's like, I'm not saying your first one was bad, but for your audience, this is so much better.
Yeah.
And for that, I'll always be grateful because he gave it to me in a way that it made it click to me.
Yeah.
To relate to your audience. And it would have never, kind of like you said, you got to start with that first word, and then you go that first paragraph, and then your first, blog post, and then you go to your first article. And, eventually I'd like to get up to the point where I can write a book.
Yeah.
And it starts with those small building blocks to get you there. And, a lot of my friends in law enforcement are like, man, that's so cool. You got an article published. And to be honest with you, I'm still right there because I was like, I never thought I would get to that point.
Yeah.
And now I have it out there, and I'm like, okay, what's
Hey,
next? Let's get the next hurdle.
You are an article author now. There you go, right? That's how it starts. And I love what you are sharing. And a lot of people will have different ideas as to how to write, how to, especially if you are on LinkedIn, there's so many people talking about how to write a post, how to hook, how to have a CTA at the end, call to action at the end. I mean, there's so many templates and strategies and things like that. But what I have come to realize for myself is you have to find your voice. That's something that you are comfortable with, and get really good in refining that voice so that when people read your article, read your story, read your post, they know that it's coming from Brent or it's coming from Pradeepa, and they will hear you through your words. So that to me is the biggest thing. Anything that I write, I will write it. I mean, now with the help of AI, I can do a, talk about the article, because I talk a lot and I talk to my article. I take that and then I edit it and I make it my own. So there are easier ways to do that now. But how you wanted to share what is your voice is only you can do that.
Absolutely, 100% agree. How did you go down the path of speaking and
Ah,
getting into the TEDx?
yeah, and again, like my speaking passion started way in my childhood. My dad is an amazing orator, and he speaks so brilliantly. He knows how to make the audience laugh and hook them in his storytelling abilities. So I think watching him grow, helped me. Uh, I would say start having the passion for talking and talking to people. For me, talking is not just about talking. Talking is about connecting. That's how I see it. And to me, I'm whenever I'm speaking, it's not just me monologuing. Even when I'm speaking with in 250 people or wherever I'm speaking, I like to connect with the audience so the audience are also interacting with me. And to me, the dialogue and the multi-log really kind of, I love that part, because there is so much richness in more people talking and interacting, rather than one head, moving their mouth and saying maybe brilliant things. Yes, I wouldn't. I mean, like, yeah, there are brilliant things, but hearing other people, getting them involved, getting them excited. That's what I really, really love about speaking. And even in my TED talk, you mentioned that, even in my TED talk, I had an engaging activity with my audience. I was able to sneak that in. And that way I could get the engagement going and not just sharing my story. So speaking is another way I wanted to connect with the people. I wanted to share what I'm passionate about, and also wanted to learn different perspectives from people.
Absolutely, and I think that it also is kind of like you very well mentioned. Like anybody can get up there and just kind of drone on in a monotone voice. And I don't really consider that speaking. That's just reciting things. Somebody that is good, that they have to make that connection with the audience. And it doesn't matter if you're talking, you're the most knowledgeable person. If you don't make that connection, people are going to tune you out pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
And so especially when I'm teaching like I say a law enforcement class, that's usually what I do. But if it doesn't matter if it's a group of cops or somebody from a church or wherever it may be, you have to make that connection, or they're not going to buy in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The connection is what make them, they may not even remember you or remember your face, but they remember the connection that's being made and the dialogue that happened. Because people, when people are, there may be thousands of people or hundreds of people sitting in your audience, but if somebody feels that, like, hey, I am connecting to the speaker and they are connecting to me, and this exchange is meaningful, they are going to remember that for a very long time, because it's personal now.
Absolutely, 100% agree. So let's dive into some topics real quick,
Yeah.
and I want to touch on some things that would be very good for first responders. Um, let's talk about like how can we like improve on decision making like under pressure.
Hmm. Um, One of the things that I've been thinking about decision making is, especially for first responders, they do have to make really, really quick decisions and in a very pressured situation. I
Yes,
have never been a first responder. I have seen some in action, but a lot in movies. That's how much my experience is. But I have read about it and heard from other people a lot as well. What I realized is, because you have to make decision decisions really quickly, and the situation is there can be so much pressure under the situation, the first thing you probably need to think about and have not at that time is clarity, right? Like what one of the biggest leadership skills and traits that's going to be super helpful is clarity. And the other thing is confidence, right? Like being clear and confidently articulating what needs to be articulated. And um, there may be a plan A that was unfolding, and people were going through a plan A depending upon how they are assessing the situation. But not everything is going to go per the plan. And in such high pressure situation, another biggest leadership opportunity is how adaptable I am. How adaptable are we as a team to assess the situation, to make adjustments to the situation, and course correct ourselves? So, having that clarity and whatever that is, right? Like whatever the decisions people are making, really able to clearly articulate that so that everybody, whomever is in that scene, really understands what's going on, what their individual part is, what they're supposed to be doing. That's really helpful. And the leadership is also shown in not just clarity, but your confidence, right? Like, hey, here's how I would love for us to operate. They may not exactly know how it's going to pan out, but you do have to show that courage, right? Like show that, hey, I am confident in moving forward with that. And last but not the least, if things are changing, we have to find a way to help everybody adapt to the situation and move forward. If we have to take a new plan forward, we should be able to take a new plan forward. So those are the three things that really comes to my mind. And this is applicable to first responders, and I'm just using corporate as an example, to corporate leaders too. Of course, corporate leaders may not go through this day in and day out or a lot frequently like first responders do. But the same thing, if there is a high pressure situation, people want their leader to show clarity and confidence, and of course, be willing to adapt to situations.
Absolutely. And I think that to kind of segue into the next topic, because I think they really go hand in hand. Um, uh, in my opinion, leaders oftentimes are just titles because anybody can be a leader.
Yeah,
And, we have to, especially in the first responder world, that person with a title is not always going to be there at that given moment. And so
yeah,
we have to be able to make those decisions on our own and to
absolutely.
do it confidently
Yeah,
and to have that clarity to be able to make those decisions. And so I think it's so people get so afraid to make a decision a lot of the times.
yeah,
And they'll call that person with the title and say, "What do I do?" Take a deep breath, slow
yeah,
down for a minute, and think about how you should operate it. And I think that's a lot of times I've always kind of ruffled feathers at places I've been because I respect people's titles. I really do. But it's just a title. You're telling me to do something the wrong way, like I have enough self awareness that I know I can do it the right way. And so, in such a paramilitaristic world, it doesn't always like lend it to me being like the favorite person at a place. But leadership is anybody can be a leader, and you should really want your people to be able to make those decisions confidently without that oversight.
absolutely. I love what you just said. Um, y- Leadership and having a title are two different things.
100%.
And one of the things that I teach in my work is for people with titles to truly enable and empower. That's a very, it's a buzzword now, but I'm intentionally and consciously saying that they really have to allow their people to make decisions. and protect the consequences of those decisions that are being made. Let's say if you're my leader, with the title, and you say like, Pradeepa, you make the decision in this scenario, and I make whatever I think is the right decision. And let's say it doesn't work per whatever it's supposed to be. If you come and say like, okay, Pradeepa, it's your fault, you did that, here is the consequences of the decision making. Do you think I will ever make a decision again on my own? No. People will do CYA because
Yes.
I've experienced the after effects of making a decision that went on poorly because I really didn't have. I thought I had the support from my leader with the title, but I really didn't, because the time it mattered, nobody was protecting me. People don't fear decision making. People fear how the consequences of a poor decision making from the past affects them to make new decisions in the future.
Yep. I've got a good story for you, and I've told it a couple times on the podcast. Um, but there was an officer I worked with. He was a sergeant, and I was a newer officer at that agency. And he'd been out hurt, and everybody talked golden about this guy. He was the best guy to work with. He was easy to work with, and I'll never forget. Another agency had gotten a vehicle pursuit, which those are inherently dangerous, and they had lost contact with all the officers, and where they were at was right along our shared border, and everything was under construction. It was on an interstate, so there was a divided highway. And so I would have had to go down like 2 miles, come back through construction, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I could see them at the top of this off ramp, and there wasn't any cars coming. The shoulder was wide enough for a car to go up, but I had my emergency lights on. And so I kind of started slowly going up it because it was quicker to go that way, go the 500 feet instead of going down around. Unbeknownst to me, this other agency's officer was sitting blacked out below me in a restaurant. So if I'd have seen that, I probably would have known everything was okay. But like their dispatch had told us, hey, we need to check on. We don't know if they're okay.
Mm.
Well, he kind of got on the radio and called me out and said, hey, there's an officer going the wrong way on this off ramp. And so when I got down there, my supervisor was understandably mad, but he asked me a question. He said, why did you do what you did?
Mm.
And so I explained to him why I did what I did. And he was an old school Marine. I was never in the military. There's a generational difference on top of that. And he proceeded to cuss me out in front of a couple different officers from different agencies. And instead of taking that moment to say, hey, let's talk about this at a different time and explain his beliefs of why I probably should have maybe handled a different way, it would have sunk in a lot more.
Yeah.
But he did it in such a way that demeaned me in front of other officers that, I mean, it got bad. He was like, well, I should write you up for this. And but from that moment forward, the way he handled that, he lost any shred of credibility he had with me.
Yeah.
To make decisions, I always was second guessing myself. Well, should I do this? Should I not do this? And people don't forget how you treat them. And so it doesn't matter. You could be the best boss ever, but if you came at them the very first time, and this was the first night we'd ever worked together, and I ended up working with them for a couple years, and it's kind of why I left that agency. I never forgot it.
Yeah.
And I don't like personally dislike him or anything like it's not that serious, but I would never want to work with him again either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never forgot it. And that the way you said that touched home so much because it happened to me, it really did.
Yeah. Yeah. People will never, I mean, people will forget what you said, what you gave them or not, stuff like that. But people will never forget how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think that's a perfect segue into compassion fatigue for first responders.
Yeah. that is, I was thinking about this, and you know, first responders are very much prone to continuously acting selflessly and going from situation to situation where they are saving lives in most of the cases. And that can also lead to some kind of numbness, right? Like, let's say people are like dying, and they have to save because that's their job at that time. They're seeing so many deaths or so many whatever, whatever horrific things that are happening, that can sometimes numb you. And when you when that numbness happens in here, then it can lead to detachment of your connection with yourself and your connection to the world. And the first thing that can go away is being compassionate towards yourself. And when we are not compassionate towards ourselves, there's no way we can show the same compassion to anybody else around us. So, in fact, that can also be not super helpful to be doing their job as well. So, like, at the beginning you shared, right, like how many people really struggle through going through traumatic situations like
Yes.
this. And you talked about the suicidal rates and all those things, because if we are compassionate towards ourselves, then we don't think about you know doing harm for ourselves.
Yes.
So the compassion fatigue is real, and how much we expose ourselves to trauma can very well lead to that. So the way that I think about this is, one, uh, we need to have an avenue like this to talk about that, because
Yes.
this is not a macho thing. This is not something that we can talk about. I know you talked about a code that maybe it's a written code, unwritten code. I'm not super familiar with that. That we don't talk about what happens in work and stuff like that. I think that taboo needs to be broken. There has to be places, there has to be support systems where we are openly and vulnerably talking about what's really going on for us. Sometimes some people are even aware of what's going on. Awareness is a first step, but what has to happen after we become aware of it, right? After we become aware of it, how can I really cope with this? What are some practices that I can do? Oftentimes when we don't talk about stuff we tend to keep inside, that itself can be a really, really big bother. So finding avenues to talk about it in safe spaces, where people are non-judgmental safe spaces, where people are openly talking about it, finding some avenues to really connect back, because the first responders are so much exposed to trauma related situations, maybe intentionally and breaking themselves from such situations, and really connecting back to themselves, not just the work. Because people are, all the people, who signed up for being a first responder, I don't think nobody else, I don't know much about it, but in my mind, this is how I think about it. They do this voluntarily because they really care, and they want to serve.
Yes.
They want to serve the community. Nobody says like you have to do this, otherwise, right? You don't have a choice. Oftentimes, I see that comes from a very deep rooted, like service oriented mind and heart. And while serving others can be really, really rewarding, I also say this to all the leaders that I work with. Protect your asset, protect the asset. You are the asset. If you don't protect yourself, there is no you to serve others. So find ways to reconnect, right? Like to start showing love and compassion in whatever way possible. It doesn't have to be touchy feely. If people are feeling that way, that's not what I'm talking about here, right? Give yourself some space, give yourself some breather, right? Like if we can't be compassionate and help ourselves, there is no way we would be able to wholeheartedly help other people. It has to start with ourselves. If people are seeing a disconnect between what their heart desires to do and how they're doing it and how they're actually feeling it, if there is a disconnect there, my request and a strong recommendation to all your listeners is to pause, right? Like really, really pause and ask yourself, like, what's really going on here? What's the disconnect here? And if we don't address that disconnect immediately, it's going to grow wider and wider.
I look at it as you have to refill your life's gas tank.
Yes,
Um, if you don't, eventually you're going to run out and be stranded.
absolutely.
Um, and I want to touch on something too.
Yeah.
I often see, at least on the police side,
Mm,
we are so often used to being the person of authority or the person in control that we get very black and white in how we operate.
mm,
And I think we often lose sight of the why we became a police officer in those moments. And we do lose a lot of the compassion that we probably should still have.
mm,
Um, and I try to personally, I try to when I get in those type of situations to remember what if I was in their position.
mm.
And that doesn't mean not doing my job. You know, if somebody committed a crime, then you have to handle appropriately. But let's just say if it's something minor, like a speeding ticket, or didn't have your seatbelt on. I've always operated under the assumption of, hey, if they're not doing this every day of the week, and they haven't got 10 tickets in the year, maybe a written warning and an explanation of why you probably should maybe fully stop at a stop sign or should be wearing your seatbelt
Yeah,
is more appropriate instead of just writing that ticket. Because let's be honest, every person has done something that they probably should have been corrected on instead of having, punitive action taken instead. And so I always try to remember the why I became a police officer. I didn't become a police officer to write tickets. I
yeah,
became a police officer to help people.
yeah,
And those are not mutually exclusive. And so I always try to, when I'm training somebody new, is hey, if they need a ticket, then write the ticket. A person's attitude judges that a lot of times. And you've got a job to do, but also don't forget the why.
yeah.
And if a person can be cut a break and be taught how to improve themselves in that process, then take that moment to take a deep breath and say, okay, let's handle it a little bit differently
Yeah.
because I don't want to ever lose sight of the why I do things.
I love that. I love that. Um, I have because you mentioned traffic ticket, it's a personal story. Is it okay if I want to share that under
Of
the
course.
same lens here? A few years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I was taking my little son. He was back then 9 years, to his doctor's appointment, to a therapy appointment, and it's one of the usual roads that I take. And of course, I was speeding a little bit over. I think it was a 30 zone. I was going maybe 42, 45, around that. I got stopped, and the police officer came and he asked me where I was going so fast, and I was telling, like, I'm a little late for my son's appointment, so I have to get there at a certain time because whatever, right? Like, and uh, what I realized was the compassion that he showed me that day, and he said, like, ma'am, I understand, but don't don't do this. He said something, I don't remember what exactly he said. So I got out with the warning. It's not about the it's more it's not just about the speeding. It's not just about me getting the warning. I was not trying to get out of the ticket or anything like that. It was a compassionate human who was showing some grace and care uh, towards me and my situation that day. And ever since that incident, and I do take that road quite frequently, Brent, I tell you, I never ever have speeded up in that road. Not because
Awesome.
there are going to be cops that are going to find me or give me tickets. It's because of that compassion. Like there was something so deeper that cop taught me that day. The way that he showed compassion and the way that he, gave me grace. I will not forget that. It's been 2 years now. I use that road a lot. I never speed now. When my husband drives the car, and I always say, like, this is the speed limit, slow down.
Yep. I love that. And it's how he handled the compassion
Mm,
instead of just saying, "Okay, this is black and white,"
yeah.
you know, and you didn't forget that.
I didn't. I will never ever forget that. I don't even remember what he said, but how he made me feel left an impression. I don't even know his name. I don't even remember how he looks. But every time I cross that, I go through that road, somehow that situation comes into my mind and I remember his kindness.
I love that.
Like you said, it's the why behind the work. Like, why did we choose this to do this in the work first place? And if we are deviating from that, and if, like you said, if you're just looking at it as a black and white, then it's probably the right time to pause and ask ourselves, like, why am I in this?
Exactly. I took something that you said just a minute ago, and it really hit home because it's so true. First responders deal with a lot of things, and you do a lot of leadership and executive coaching, and I think you'll relate to this. Is especially now that I've been working on getting my coaching certification because I see the similarity so much.
Mm,
But you go through a good coaching session, and you're very involved. And at the end, you feel worn out because you're trying to you're dealing with their emotions, and you're trying not to, as a human, you're going to receive some of that energy and it's going to wear on you.
yeah,
And so you get done with that coaching session and you're like, man, I'm really tired because there's a lot of emotion involved in those sessions a lot of the time.
yeah,
It's the same way when we go out and deal with a critical incident or something along those lines. You get done and you just have that like
yeah,
adrenaline dump and you're like, what did I just go through?
yeah.
And luckily, over the past few years, it's finally started to change a little bit. And I recently just went through the first part of peer support training. And so a lot of agencies are going to peer support training. But what I really took away from it was coaching and peer support use a lot of the exact same lingo and terms, and they
Mm,
actually commingle a lot
mm,
because a lot of peer support is actually coaching.
mm,
Um, because as a good leader, you're going to be coaching the people that you interact with on your shift, or the people who work in your precinct, or whatever the case may be. Career life, they all intersect, they all work together, they all work against each other at some point. um, a good supervisor really has to implement those coaching principles in to be a good leader, in my opinion.
absolutely, absolutely. As a leader, you do take different stance depending upon the situation, right? There's no one size. Here's the stance that I'm going to take. I
Exactly.
often see myself. I call myself a coach because it's kind of like an umbrella term, but I don't only coach, right? Like, the traditional, I wouldn't say it's not traditional, right? Like how coaching says, like, we have to ask powerful questions. I don't,
Yes.
right? Like, I have my own style. Sometimes I teach, sometimes I tell what to do. Sometimes, I ask a
Yes.
question that they need to think for themselves. So sometimes, I have to lay out or give them a strategy. It really, really depends upon who that is, who I'm working with, what works for them, what might be the right thing. And I don't have a prepared script, right? It's just my presence, and that will guide me to do what's the best way. Like that, people, first responders, you have to assess the situation, assess the people in front of you. And I don't think there will be any uh, template or book that's going to tell you step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, do this, step four, do this, because those steps probably worked for the person who wrote that for a specific situation. They handled it whenever they handled it with the group of people, whomever they are. But every individual, every situation, every group, every scenario is going to be very different. And as leaders, we have to adapt ourselves to situations and assess the situation quickly. That way, we can bring the best leadership to whatever is needed at that time.
Absolutely. I think at some point, every leader is going to be a coach. They're going to be a consultant. They're
Yes.
going to be a mentor. They're going to be a trainer, and they have a lot to overlap, but they're
Yeah.
all each a little bit different roles.
Yeah.
And so I think you're absolutely right. The leader is the one that wears many hats,
Yes.
um, and you got to be proficient in all of them to be a good leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I um, latch on to in my line of work is, how can I make this easy for people? Because we are living in a world where everything has become more complex. Everything has become so much information, and there's so much available, and people are overwhelmed with that.
Yes.
And for me, it doesn't matter who I coach, what role they play. Can I make this a little bit, can I help them to make this a little bit easier? What would be the easiest way to move forward? And when we come from that place, I think a lot of those over complexities and our thinking, like, I have to do this and this and this and this, I think those will go away. Because like you beautifully articulated earlier, connecting with our why. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I coaching leaders? Why am I coaching first responders? Why am I writing my blog? Why am I writing my post? What's the purpose here? And how can I, in a simplest of manner, do that?
Yes. Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Well, as we start to wrap up a little bit, I want to give you a moment to talk about your website. You've got a leadership academy. You've got classes specifically tied for women, leadership, coaching. Like you touched on a little bit earlier, you've got a book on infertility and the journey through that. Um, Tell my audience where they can find all these resources, how
Yeah.
they can connect with you, because I just love picking your brain so much that I think that my audience would as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Brent. This is such a phenomenal evening for me, just to openly talk about the things that really matters to me and matters to you as well. Um, People can, one of the active platform for me is LinkedIn, and people can find me under the same name. So I would, if your folks are in LinkedIn, please connect with me there, because I do write a lot, and I talk a lot about leadership, um, mostly from the corporate angle. But I don't think it matters, because everything that I write is, I personally think it's applied for humanity at large. So please connect with me there. I do, I'm on Facebook as well. My website is pradeepa.coach, which is getting or should I say rebranded now as we speak, but it will be the same website, pradeepa.coach. In there, people can find information about all the services and the programs, about my books and everything. Brent, we talked about my first book and we talked about my last book on leadership, but there is the second book I think would be super, super valuable for all your listeners. That's the book called Loving Myself and You. And that was my own personal journey of my own growth, learning to first love myself and really being open and okay with all, what we call as not so great things about ourselves. So it's all very personal stories, it's very personal insights. But the beauty about the book is whomever reads that book, they can apply. My story is my story, but people can see themselves through my story in their life, because there's always that relation there. And I think that would be a phenomenal book and a phenomenal resource for all your listeners, Brent. Loving Myself and You.
Awesome. And can they get that off Amazon, or where can they get it at?
Absolutely. All my books are available on Amazon. The easiest way to get to all my books is just type my name, or if they're interested in just the title itself, the first book is Infertility Can Suck Less. The second one is Loving Myself and You. And the latest and the greatest is Practical Leadership.
Awesome. And if they want to watch your TEDx, is it on YouTube?
Absolutely. It is definitely on YouTube. And again, like the easiest way to get to that is all they can do is TEDx Pradeepa. Mine will be the one that pops up. I don't think there's any other Pradeepas who have given a TEDx talk.
Well, Pradeepa, you are always welcome back on my podcast.
Thank you.
You have been great tonight, and we will wrap up.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining me tonight.
Brent, it's such a pleasure. And, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you so much for doing this and creating this platform, which is really, really needed.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Bye.